There was no pressure to impress anyone. No need to appear talented. He simply worked. When the sun disappeared behind the mountains, he locked the shed and walked home unnoticed. No one asked where he had been. No one knew. For the first time, his dream belonged only to him. Days turned into weeks. Every evening the same rhythm filled the hidden workshop. Tap, tap, tap. Some days the marble seemed impossible to shape. Entire sections cracked unexpectedly. Hours of careful work disappeared in seconds. Elias became frustrated. Several times he considered giving up. But then he remembered something strange. There was no one waiting for news. No one asking, "How is the masterpiece coming?" No one expecting success. There was nothing to protect except the work itself. So he returned the next evening, and the next, and the next. Little by little, the stone began to change. Back in the city, the marble in the square remained untouched. Yet strangely, it attracted more attention than ever. People surrounded it every afternoon. They imagined its future. They debated what it would become. One merchant proudly claimed he knew the artist. Another insisted the king himself had ordered the sculpture. Rumors spread faster than truth. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. People grew impatient. One child scratched his initials into the stone. Another climbed onto it with muddy boots. Travelers leaned against it while eating lunch. Rain stained its smooth surface. Winter winds chipped its corners. It slowly lost the beauty it once had. Not because someone hated it, but because it had been exposed before it was ready. One evening Elias returned from the forest and secretly walked through the marketplace. He stopped before the public marble. He barely recognized it. The perfect stone had become scarred, cracked, dirty, covered with careless marks left by strangers. The old sculptor appeared beside him. "Tell me," he asked softly, "what do you see?" "A ruined block of marble," Elias answered. "And why is it ruined?" "Because everyone touched it." The old man nodded. "Exactly." He pointed toward the damaged stone. "This marble never had the chance to become anything. Before the sculptor could shape it, the world shaped it first." Elias remained silent. The old man continued walking. "Come, there is one more thing you must see." They returned to the hidden shed deep inside the forest. The old sculptor slowly opened the wooden door. Golden evening light poured inside. Elias froze. Standing before him was not a rough block of stone. It had become something extraordinary. Graceful wings stretched upward. Flowing robes seemed to move with the wind. Every detail reflected patience. Every curve carried purpose. Although unfinished, it was already breathtaking. Elias stared in disbelief. "I made this." The old sculptor smiled. "No, you discovered it." Then he looked directly into Elias's eyes. "Do you understand the difference between these two stones?" Elias slowly shook his head. The old man stepped closer. The marble in the town square was given to everyone before it had become anything. So everyone felt entitled to touch it, to judge it, to question it, to imagine it. Little by little, they stole its future. He gently placed his hand on the hidden sculpture. This one was protected. It was allowed to become strong before the world ever saw it. The old sculptor paused. Then he spoke the words Elias would remember for the rest of his life. "Dreams are no different. When they are young, they are soft. They are uncertain. They are easily shaped by the opinions of others. Every compliment can make you comfortable. Every criticism can make you doubt. Every expectation becomes another weight on your shoulders." He looked toward the city in the distance. But when a dream grows quietly, when it is strengthened by discipline instead of applause, it becomes something no opinion can destroy. Elias felt his heartbeat quicken. For years, he had blamed laziness. He had blamed fear. He had blamed bad luck. But now, he saw the truth. Every time he announced a dream, he handed part of it away. Some people filled it with praise. Others filled it with expectations. Some filled it with doubt. Soon, there was no room left for the dream itself. The old sculptor smiled. The greatest creations are not born in crowded squares. They are born in quiet workshops, where no one is watching. Elias looked once more at the unfinished sculpture. For the first time in his life, he no longer wanted people to admire his promises. He wanted them to one day stand speechless before his work. That night, Elias didn't hurry home. Instead, he remained inside the quiet workshop long after the old sculptor had gone to sleep. The lantern burned softly beside him, casting long shadows across the unfinished marble. He slowly ran his fingers over its rough surface. For years, he had searched for the perfect idea, the perfect opportunity, the perfect moment to begin. Now he realized something that made him smile. He had never needed a better idea. He had only needed a quieter beginning. Outside, the wind whispered through the tall pine trees. Inside, only the gentle sound of his breathing filled the room. For the first time, silence no longer felt lonely. It felt like freedom. The next morning, the city woke as it always had. Merchants opened their shops. Children raced through the streets. Craftsmen carried their tools to work. Nothing had changed, except Elias. His closest friend, Rowan, spotted him crossing the marketplace. "Elias," he called with a grin. "I haven't heard about any new grand project lately. Have you finally given up on becoming famous?" The old Elias would have laughed and announced another brilliant dream. Instead, he simply smiled. "I'm keeping busy." Rowan raised an eyebrow. "Busy doing what?" "Just working." That was all Elias said. The conversation ended there. As he walked away, he felt something unusual. There was no pressure to impress anyone. No need to explain himself. His work belonged only to him. And somehow, that made him work even harder. Every evening, after completing his daily responsibilities, Elias disappeared into the forest. The hidden workshop became his second home. The old sculptor never stood over him. He never corrected every mistake. He never praised every improvement. Instead, he watched quietly from a distance. Sometimes he said nothing for days. At first, Elias found this frustrating. He wanted advice. He wanted encouragement. He wanted someone to tell him he was making progress. But the old sculptor understood something Elias did not. Constant approval creates dependence. Quiet effort creates confidence. So he allowed Elias to struggle. Because struggle teaches lessons that compliments never can. One evening, Elias struck the marble too hard. A large section cracked away. Weeks of careful work disappeared in a single second. The sound echoed through the workshop. Silence followed. Elias stared at the broken stone. His chest tightened. His hands trembled. Anger boiled inside him. "I've ruined everything." Without thinking, he threw his hammer across the room. It crashed against the wall. For several minutes, he simply stood there, breathing heavily, defeated. The old Elias would have walked away forever. He would have searched for another exciting dream. Perhaps painting. Perhaps architecture. Perhaps something entirely different. Anything except facing failure. But this time, no one knew about the sculpture. No audience waited to hear excuses. No friends expected an explanation. There was only one choice: quit or continue. The following evening, Elias returned. He picked up the hammer, collected the broken pieces, studied the damage. Then he quietly began again. Not because he felt inspired, not because he suddenly became confident, but because he had made a promise to himself. And for the first time, that promise mattered more than his emotions. Weeks turned into months. The seasons slowly changed. Spring flowers disappeared beneath the warmth of summer. Summer gave way to golden autumn leaves. Soon, the first snowflakes drifted gently through the forest. While the city celebrated festivals, Elias kept carving. While others rested during holidays, he kept carving. When rain soaked the mountains, he carved. When winter winds froze his hands, he carved. When motivation disappeared, he carved anyway. Something remarkable was happening. The sculpture wasn't the only thing changing. So was the man creating it. The impatient dreamer who once chased excitement had begun to disappear. In his place stood someone stronger, someone calmer, someone who no longer depended on applause to keep moving. His greatest reward was no longer hearing people praise his ideas. It was hearing the steady rhythm of hammer against stone. Tap, tap, tap. Each strike reminded him that progress was being made, even when no one could see it. Meanwhile, the marble block in the city square had become little more than a forgotten attraction. The wooden sign announcing, "The greatest sculpture Ashmore has ever seen," had faded beneath months of rain and sunlight. The letters were barely readable. Children climbed over the damaged stone as if it were part of a playground. Street vendors leaned baskets against it. Travelers ignored it completely. The excitement that once surrounded it had vanished. One afternoon, Elias stood quietly across the square watching people pass. The old sculptor joined him. "Do you notice something?" he asked. Elias nodded. "No one cares anymore." The old man smiled. They never cared about the stone. They cared about the promise. When promises remain promises for too long, people stop believing. Elias thought about every announcement he had made throughout his life.